How's everyone? Grant here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of the ZTE Blade Z Max. So first off, I want to thank the ZTE Z community for sending this out to me to check out and review. If you haven't heard of the Z community, maybe you got a ZTE device, maybe you want to learn more about them, you got some questions about ZTE devices, or maybe just want to hang out with some good people online, check out the Z community. I'll leave a link in the description below. And as of this review, you can find the ZTE Blade Z Max at Metro PCS for $100, or even free if you're willing to port in a number from another carrier. But let's kind of get into the review. We've got a lot to cover here, and we'll start off by checking out the design. And first things first that's going to strike you is this back design here, mainly the dual camera setup there. It's a 16 megapixel primary camera with a 2 megapixel secondary sensor. You see your flash up top. It even has a fingerprint sensor. You can see that nice chrome rim around the fingerprint sensor. So even on a $100 device, we've got biometrics and a fingerprint scanner. That's pretty much becoming table stakes now for almost any device here in 2017. No carrier branding, no Metro PCS logos. You just got that ZTE logo right there. The other thing that really stands out about the back, obviously, is going to be this back material here. It's a hard plastic matte material. It's very grippy, so you don't have to worry about traditional glass backs or metallic backs that might be cold and slippery. This material here pretty much eliminates the need for cases. I don't use a case with this device. It has more than enough grip for me. And this being a fairly large device, I don't want to add any more bulk to the phone itself. Taking a look at the sides here, it's a plastic rail going around the side that is coated in a material to kind of look like some anodized aluminum, but it is plastic, but it looks pretty good with that coating on it. On the right hand side, you see you've got your volume buttons and your power button there, and it is a textured power button there, if we can get that in the shot. I really like power buttons that are textured, differentiates between the volume buttons, which is very nice. On the bottom, you have your USB Type-C, so this has USB Type-C, which is really awesome. You've got a primary microphone, and as well as a 3.5mm headphone jack, so you do have a headphone jack, no dongles required with this. You've got your SIM card tray, also a micro SD card slot, so it does have expandable memory, no adaptable storage, but if you need extra memory, you can slide in your micro SD card slot. Up top, you've got a secondary microphone. And as we move around to the front here, you'll notice if you're familiar with the Z Max lineup that from the front, it looks just like a ZTE Z Max Pro, a Blade X Max that I had reviewed on the channel not too long ago. So this is pretty much the follow-up on Metro PCS to the Z Max Pro. So if you like the Z Max Pro and you're waiting for an upgrade, this is pretty much going to be it for now. On the front, you can see there, it's got a 8 megapixel front sensor. You can record up to 720p, no 1080p recording unfortunately here. And we'll get more into that as we talk about the cameras. You've got your earpiece up top there, as well as your backlit capacitive buttons for home and your choice of recents and or multitasking that is customizable, and we'll get more into that a little bit later. And as we go ahead and try to hit the fingerprint scanner to get into the home screen, you'll notice that's pretty quick. It's not going to be the fastest fingerprint sensor in the world, but it's definitely accurate and is more than fast enough for a $100 device. And now that we're actually into the device, you can see that it has a very big 6-inch display. So you got 1920 by 1080 across, so that is a traditional 16:9 aspect ratio, full HD 1080p. No need to worry about dealing with the modern 18:9 aspect ratios. They are more narrow and fit better in the hand, but this being a large 6-inch display, you're probably going to want to consume a lot of video and media on it, and a 16:9 aspect ratio is pretty good for that right now, as most content is not geared for 18:9 by default. You're going to watch videos like YouTube and 18:9, you're going to have to deal with letterboxing and the black bars. You're not going to have to deal with that here on this device, so you get the full real estate of the screen to deal with. And when we're talking about the display, like I said, 6-inch full HD 1080p display. It is an LCD panel. It's an IPS display, so as we look at it, you've got some nice natural colors here, and we even turn it down a little bit so you can see it on camera a little bit. It's got some great viewing angles being an IPS display, as you can see there. And it gets very, very bright. So it's right now on auto brightness. I can take that off and crank it all the way up for you to see. And it is very bright, too much for the camera to really handle there. So I'll dial it back. And because of that, you're not gonna have to deal with any kind of daylight visibility issues. Doing this display in daylight, not gonna have any problems because of how bright it is. Other things you're going to notice here is that it's pretty much looking like stock Android. So this is the default stock launcher that comes with it. If you look at it here, it looks a lot like stock Android. And if we go into the pull down menu here, you can see notification shade, very much stock Android-ish. Go into the settings, it also looks like stock Android. As you can see, out of the box is running 7.1.1. And as of now, I have the August 1st security patch, so relatively up to date, hoping to get the September or October security patch soon. This does come equipped with a Snapdragon 435 processor, 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of onboard storage. That combined with a near stock experience is pretty fast, fairly fluid, so we can clear all the apps out here. You can see scrolling of the app drawer, very fast, no problems there. We can launch things like Twitter here, get a sense for some app launch times. We'll also peruse around the UI so you can kind of see how it performs a little bit. You can see Instagram, we'll launch that, and we'll go ahead and launch maybe YouTube. So we've got 3 apps running right now. If I go back and try to launch and go back to Twitter, you can see it's going to reload. That's because of that 2 gigs of RAM. Pretty much any Android phone with 2 gigs of RAM, you're going to have multitasking, not issues, but slowdowns because you're going to have app reloads. Usually if it has at least 3 gigs, which I would have liked to see here, you're not going to be dealing with that problem nearly as much. But if we keep it into Twitter, you can see scrolling here is not too bad. There is going to be a little bit of stutter, nothing too bad, and nothing that you're going to really have to complain about on a device like this. And as you can see here, we can scroll around, multitask, it's going to reload again. So that's the price to pay for 2 gigs of RAM. But really, if you notice, just moving around the UI itself, it is fast and pretty fluid. So I'm not really complaining about fluidity on the device at all. The animations are very smooth, and using applications itself, no problems there, unless you're maybe going to do some heavy gaming or anything like that. Normal everyday to day tasks, the UI is going to just move around fast and fluid. You're not going to have any kind of problems with that. And performance is going to be more than acceptable. Of course, if you're going to compare this to a flagship phone with something like a Snapdragon 835, or you're used to that kind of performance, yes, you will notice the difference here in this device. But if you're using this on a daily and you're not going to be doing any kind of heavy intensive tasks all the time, performance will be more than enough for you. So being stock Android, it doesn't have a whole lot of customizations, but you can go into the settings to see what you can customize here and what extras you do get. So if we go into display here, you notice you do have the press power button twice to launch your camera. So from a lock screen, you can just press your power button twice, it'll launch into the camera. Now this wasn't working on my Blade X Max for Cricket Wireless, but it is working here on the Blade Z Max. So other customizations, we can go into sound. And what you'll notice right off the bat is Dolby Audio. So if you go into that, you can select from different kind of presets. You also have custom presets that you can define yourself. You can do that by just launching the Dolby Audio app. And Dolby Audio here is not really a gimmick. It's a nice equalizer to have. And while it's not fine-tuned equalizer, and by that I can show you, but as you can see here, it's not as fine-grained, but you can set it up to your taste here. You have a volume leveler, dialogue enhancer, and different types of EQ modes to select from, or you can just set your own by customizing it right here. And I can tell you from experience that, again, it's not a gimmick. The fact that you can actually customize your equalizer a little bit does make a definite difference. When you plug in your headphones, you will hear a difference. This actually sounds really, really good for a device in this price. It even sounds better than some more expensive devices. So I was really impressed with the headphone performance on the Blade Z Max because of these Dolby Audio settings here. So that is a nice customization and add-on that ZTE provides. And if you go into call settings here, you can see it does have Wi-Fi calling. It also does have voice over LTE. So those are some nice additional call settings that you can have, especially if you don't have the best reception indoors. Wi-Fi calling is going to be becoming key, and voice over LTE definitely enhances call voice performance. If you look here, other customizations are the navigation keys. So the capacitive buttons at the bottom are customizable here. So you can reverse the order. You can either have the traditional back button on the left and recent buttons on the right, or if you're coming from a Samsung device, or you're just liking this orientation, you can have the back button on the right, recent apps on the left. I'm more traditional. I like the normal Android setup like this, and so that's what I'll do, but it's great that you actually have that customizability here on these capacitive buttons. And one thing that I forgot to mention in the display settings here is the pulse notification light, so you can toggle that on and off. And the notification light, instead of it being up here somewhere, it's actually the home button. So that backlit home button will actually pulse when you get notifications. And I really like that feature. It's very subtle and very nice. So when you get a notification, you're gonna see your home button there just pulsing in and out slowly, letting you know that you got some notifications. I really do like that implementation here by ZTE. And one last fairly useful customization I want to show you here is in security and customizing the fingerprint. So you can see here you have quick open app, so you can actually customize each fingerprint that you've set up to launch an app when you tap on the fingerprint sensor. So you can actually have it launch the camera as soon as you tap it to unlock it. So I can set up my first fingerprint to launch the camera. So if I lock the phone and I tap to unlock it, it's actually going to launch the camera here right away. So that's a nice feature there if you want to quickly get into some apps when you unlock your phone. So other fingerprint gestures here is you can use the fingerprint sensor to take a photo. So maybe you want to take a selfie and you're holding your phone out this way. Instead of having to reach up and tap the screen or tap the shutter button, you can actually just tap on the fingerprint sensor to take a photo. So that's actually quite convenient and nice. And also you have the answer call gesture. So whenever you get a call, you want to tap on the fingerprint sensor to answer it, you can do that as well. And while we're here in settings, I thought I'd mention that it does not support the 5 GHz Wi-Fi band. It only supports a 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi band. And that may not sound like a big deal, but for some people it is. Like me at my work, my Wi-Fi, my main network there is only on the 5 GHz Wi-Fi band, so I can't use Wi-Fi on this device there. And most people have a 5 GHz Wi-Fi enabled router, and so they want to take advantage of that extra bandwidth. So to me, it is a fairly big deal. I'm hoping in the next iteration they're going to consider including 5 GHz Wi-Fi support. So that's going to do it as far as customizations here. Being stock Android, you're not going to get a ton of features here like you may have on some other skins, but at least for me, the customizations that they do offer are quite useful. So the other thing that's not quite custom is their camera app. So this is a custom ZTE camera app. If you have other ZTE devices, this will look fairly familiar to you, but this with the dual camera setup on the back does have some additional camera modes that are quite useful and quite fun to use. So let's kind of go through the app itself. Of course, you've got your standard photo mode there, but you also have additional modes in photo. So you can see there, you have manual mode. So it's actually quite a capable manual mode. So if you notice here, you have sliders to control all your usual things like ISO, exposure, white balance, shutter speed, and focus. So that's actually quite a capable manual mode on a device like this. And we can go back here and we can see we've also got an option for panorama, multi-exposure, as well as time-lapse. So that's nice. And as you can see up top here, you've got your flash, you have HDR. There is no auto HDR, so if you want to use HDR, you're gonna have to toggle it on and off. No auto HDR available here, unfortunately. You have your timer as well as flip to your front camera there. And if we take a look at the camera settings itself, we can check out all the resolutions here. So max resolution is 16 megapixels, and you can see all the other resolutions there as well. You've got other features like watermarking your photos, geotagging, etc. if you want. If we go over to video mode here, we can check out the settings for the resolutions, and rear-facing video is able to capture up to 1080p video. Also, for both photos and video, you've got some filters that you can play with here. And probably the best feature of all, like I said, is the dual camera setup. So if you go into dual mode here, you can see you've got some additional camera settings for bokeh, portrait mode, as well as monocolor. So bokeh and portrait mode pretty much function the same. If you actually go into something like bokeh here, we can try to pull a subject, see if I can get this on camera or not. And you can actually go ahead and tap to focus. And you can see the different aperture settings here on the right, but that can be adjusted after the fact. So if you're in a rush and you just want to try to capture a nice bokeh photo, just go into bokeh mode, tap to focus, and hit the shutter button. And we can go in here and look at the photo. And you can see it apply the bokeh filter. There it went. And you can even go in after the fact by tapping on that button down there. And go ahead and refocus things. So I can tap on the background there, and it'll take a bit of time, but it'll refocus it. I can refocus on that main subject again, and it'll apply the blur effect that you can see in the background there. You can always just adjust the aperture settings here for less or more bokeh, depending on how the photo is looking to your taste. So it's very nice that you can not only take it, but you can adjust it after the fact. Bokeh mode, very cool. Portrait mode functions exactly the same. Now we can go in here and check out monocolor mode. So monocolor mode pretty much uses the mono sensor, and you can highlight and take photos with just blue, green, or red colors popping out at you. So for example, I can bring in R2D2 here, who is clearly blue, and we can select blue in the monocolor settings there. And as you can see here, everything in the picture looks black and white except for the blue highlights on the box and of course on R2D2. So now we'll see if I can get this into the frame here on the video, and I'll just tap to focus here on R2D2 and we'll hit the shutter button to take the photo. And we'll see here the photo is in black and white except for the blue highlights on the box there and of course R2D2. So monocolor mode is definitely a fun mode, probably my most fun mode here on the camera itself along with bokeh. And I've done a full camera test and sample video, so I'll link that either down below or I'll pop up a card here for you to check that out if you want to see samples of both still photos as well as video out of both the front and rear camera, as well as samples from all these modes I'm showing you here. Bokeh mode, monocolor mode, I've got that all in a separate video for you to check out and see the quality for yourself. So now let's move on to things like battery life. So this is boasting a 4080 milliamp hour battery, so a very big battery packed into here, and a fairly slim design as far as you can see. It's got a flat back there, so you don't have a big bulging battery with some slightly rounded corners. And with that 4080 milliamp hour battery, I've been getting some pretty good battery life. It took a few days for the battery to settle in, but I've been consistently now getting 6.5 to over 7 hours of screen on time on this, which is very good. So that big battery combined with a Snapdragon 435, as well as pretty much a stock Android experience, all adds up to more than all-day battery. Depending on how you use your phone with that kind of screen on time and that kind of battery life, you can probably get up to 2 days of battery life no problem here out of this device. So if you're worried about battery life and that's important to you, you're going to get a very good battery life experience here on the ZTE Blade Z Max. So moving on to audio, like I said before, the Dolby audio settings on this device make listening to music and plugging in headphones on the Blade Z Max a pleasure to use. Audio sounds great coming out of the headphone jack, definitely better than expected, and even better than some more expensive phones, quite honestly. So plugging in headphones, audio performance there is very, very good. It does only have a single firing rear-facing speaker here on the back, as you can see on the bottom right there. Would have been nice if it was on the side somewhere or on the bottom instead of rear firing, but it is a single loud speaker, and we can actually go in here and play some music and you can judge for yourself. So if you're listening to your music like this, that's what it would sound like. Turning it back out. I'll put it next to the mic so you can hear it. So definitely a pretty good audio experience here, and even though it does have that rear firing speaker, which I don't necessarily like, like I said, I would have liked for it to be downward firing or maybe on the side, but it is a single loudspeaker and the audio is pretty loud coming out of it. And lastly, we talk about some lifestyle features and other things like water certification, water resistance, waterproofing. So this does not carry an official IP certification for water and dust resistance. So you're not going to get waterproofing, you're not going to get water resistance here on this device, at least not a certified level. Most phones nowadays are pretty much things like IP54 certified, which is pretty much things like splash proof. Light rain can get on it, you're not going to have any problems. I've got some splashes on this and a little bit of drizzle, and it hasn't been a problem for me. So as long as you're not dunking this in water, I think you'll be fine. But if you really want that kind of high water certification, water resistance, you're not going to get that here on the Blade Z Max. Also, there is no wireless charging. That's becoming very popular nowadays with Apple implementing that in the latest iPhones. So if you're looking for wireless charging, you're also not going to get that here on the Z Max. So just to wrap this up with my final thoughts on the ZTE Blade Z Max, for a $100 phone, I came away impressed, just like the Z Max Pro, the Blade X Max that came before it. It is definitely well exceeds its price point in pretty much all areas. Performance is very good for day-to-day tasks, so long as you're not going to push it with heavy gaming or anything like that. And I think you have to temper your expectation for the price and the performance that this thing offers. Given the specs and given the price, it definitely offers a very nice performance experience here. Audio, like I said, plugging in headphones is above average. Camera performance is also exceeding expectation. Low light is not going to be that great, but that's kind of to be expected. But in good light, it is a very capable camera, and you are able to capture some very nice photos and video. Like I said in my camera review though, if you're going to capture video on this device and you want to play it back, for some reason the audio, at least on my device, comes out almost unusable. It comes out very low and tinny for whatever reason, which is odd because like you heard on the audio portion, the speaker here is capable of pumping out some fairly loud audio when listening to music, watching YouTube, etc. But for some reason when I play back recorded video on this device, the audio does not sound very good. Once offloaded, like you saw in that camera samples video that I had, it actually does sound normal and does sound pretty good. Maybe a little bit tinny, but certainly pretty loud and more than usable. Also, battery performance with that large 4080 mAh battery is very good. Like I said, over 7 hours of battery life, and depending on how you use it, probably at least 2 days of battery life here. So if battery life is important to you, this device is going to deliver. And so for some things I didn't really like about it, it's going to be that it doesn't support that 5 GHz Wi-Fi band. Again, only supports 2.4 GHz. That's important to some people. It only has 2 GB of RAM. I wish they would have put in 3 GB because when you try to go back and multitask, a lot of apps are going to reload even though you've just launched them. And that's just the fact for any device on Android with 2 gigs of RAM. 3 gigs of RAM is usually what you need as far as a minimum to avoid all that. So I wish they would have added at least 1 more gig of RAM. And lastly, I wish they would have had 1080p recording on the front-facing camera. Again, only 720p on the front-facing camera there. Would have been nice to get at least 1080p. But overall, I did enjoy my time using the Blade Z Max. And for the price, especially if you can get it for free by porting inline, it is a no-brainer here. A lot of folks will probably say it's good for a backup phone, and that's probably true, but I think depending on your needs, it can be definitely more than enough for your primary phone. So really evaluate your needs in a device and think about what you want to be spending on it, because the ZTE Blade Z Max could definitely fit the bill. Of course, if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below. And as always, thanks for watching.